we are ready to start now. Once again, very warm welcome to all of you today in the second session for the Agenda for Survival program. And in the first session, we talked a lot about building a context for the program. Why are we talking about climate change? Why are we talking about an agenda for survival? And we shared with you the extreme weather events database, where we asked you to look at the extreme weather events within your state. So I hope that that gave you some idea about the severity of the crisis in your area, that gave you a chance to explore about the issues in your area, and that gave you some direction as to what you can take up for your final written assignment. And in your final assignment, as I mentioned before, what you're going to do, you're going to take up any issue that you feel is pertinent to your context, and you're going to research it, explore its different aspects, and then prepare sort of a narrative around it. What is the problem? What could be the potential causes? What could be the solutions, particularly community driven solutions? So today we are going to talk about how do you create such a narrative, such a story around any issue that you have identified. So to do that, we have with us today our speaker, who is also the managing editor of the Down to Earth magazine, Richard Mahapatra. He has a very extensive experience in the field. He's a veteran journalist, and he has worked extensively on a variety of different issues, from agriculture, from food systems to rural issues to climate change, extreme weather events, and a lot more. And he and his team have been behind the annual State of India's Environment Report, which have been one of a kind report covering a vast array of environment issues in India. These have been released since 2014. Richard has been behind working on the reports since 2014. So today he's going to bring in his vast experience of reporting, of writing such narratives, of creating issues into stories that rivet readers, that give us detailed insights into issues that we want to be brought to the forefront. So I welcome you, Richard, to the session here, and I hand over the stage to you now.
Thank you, Shakshi, and good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining in. As Saki said, I am a journalist. In fact, I am a reporter, and a reporter can be safely defined as a porter also, who port actually story every day. So basically, reporters are porting stories or telling stories every day. Those happen to be true stories, and that way you can say that it's a job of a courier boy also. One with the news gag worker. You go report and tell the story. And that's where, and how we tell the story, how you communicate actually, that makes the difference. I don't know most of my readers. I have not seen them. It's a world of blind. But I communicate, hoping that whatever story I have told or the way I have put, they will be reading it, understanding it, and might be getting the message. So that's all about communication. And in this brief, being a professional communicator, as a journalist, there is no way you can actually define communication, or there is no formula you can apply on how to communicate, but there are few characteristics that we'll talk about actually. And going a bit structured and scientific about communications, that helps. And you will be also taught in many places if you go and study communications specifically. It's pure science and nothing else. So that's all about. And before we go into the presentations, as I understand, you have to actually do a piece of communications or an article that you will pick up from your subject, then you will write about it. So that's the beginning. And you have also heard about in the last things about data, about few storage, must be very interesting storage. So that ultimately you have to communicate now. So doing that, let me share you few things that we have gathered as professional communicators, the science and the art of communications, and to tell a story, how to frame a story, and why to tell a story, and why to frame in that particular way. So that's all about communications and communicating your message. So let me share a brief presentation.
Richard, just interrupting you for a second here. If all of you can turn on your cameras, that would be really great. So Richard can see you and talk to you instead of just talking to a screen. So if you can turn on your camera, please do so. Please go ahead, Richard. Thanks.
So as I just put you and briefed you, it's all about a story and a teller and the frame. This is the three things that actually constitute what we call communicating or writing a message or a story. There has to be a story, there has to be a teller, that's you and me, and more importantly, there has to be a frame within which we have to tell a story. But before it, whenever we say that we have to write, we assume, I think we enter into that very difficult identity to be called a writer. And that's very scary, sometimes very intimidating whether I'm a writer. Do I have those kind of, capabilities or the skills or the, competency? Not exactly. Nobody is a writer. Most importantly, people like you and me that we are entering into these things. We are not writer. Basically, we are communicator. Treat yourself as people who are going to communicate some things. It's just writing down is the medium or the way you are communicating. That you need not to be a writer for this. You have to be a communicator. So keep this in mind. We are not writer per se. We are communicators. We are communicating certain things, a story, a message, or anything. And we have been doing that genetically. As I speak, I have already spoken for, I think, 2 minutes, 3 minutes now. Every minute when I speak to you now, my genetics, my physical being, is processing some things up to 3 billion signals to hold this 1 minute of communications. That's my brain is doing instantly. In fact, that's higher than a supercomputer rate. I can see you, I can see the screen, and I am also communicating with you without knowing you, just reading and from the experiences that I am remembering and communicating this. We are as a physical being, human is a genetically communicator. There is a central unit, senses are there, and the brain processes it. Then you make an instant sentence out of it. Vocal cord makes it audible to you. It reaches to you. It goes into your ears. It's processed. So basically, that's all about us. We are genetic communicators. And for that matter, I think most of the living organisms are doing that. We might not be knowing their language from plants to everything. So keep this in mind. We are genetically a obsessive communicator, and that's a very essential to our existence. And as you know, whether it's giving a message, reciting a mantra, even all the secret mantras also we get from others, from the pandits, to many other essential things. So it's communications always happening, and the communications happening also at a certain level that we are alive due to that. Just imagine on your skin, the body, millions of cells are dying at every moment.
Parents of Bhagavad Gita.
So these human cells are dying every moment, millions of them, to keep us alive, and they are communicating with our within themselves exactly when to die and who to die. One of them refuses to communicate, either to die or to commit suicide. It becomes what you call the disease called the cancer. And for us, communications has a different or a earmarked objective also. We basically communicate to change. Whether a journalist, as researcher, as academician, as storyteller, whoever we are, if we are into, if we are communicating, then we have an objective, and that's to change actually. Whichever we want to bring in change, but the change is our objective behind our communications. So let me get to the very fundamental questions of what is a communications. In the beginning, I told you I think it's very difficult to define what is communications. And put it swiftly in the Nike way, just do it. Speak, whichever way. Write, communicate. Sometimes silence could be also one way of communicating. So there is no definition, but there is a defining character about communications. It's basically it's a two-way traffic. It can't be one way. Two-way means I speak to you, you processes what I speak or I communicate, and you get back to me. That's how the communication takes place. Otherwise, it's not communications. So you do some research, you write a story, you do a great piece of analysis of data. So you give it to your reader or somebody whom you want to actually target for your objective of bringing in change or influencing some things. If that other side is not getting it and you are not getting in reactions, it's not communication. So that's why they also say that communication has to be also sometimes provocative to achieve this. So there is no definition per se, but by character, communications is a two-way road. Now come to another fundamental questions that we have been talking about. You'll be doing assignments very soon. And I'm sure by this time you must have decided or have selected your relevant topics, must have gone through certain, examples. I'm sure your Rajit Sen Gupta must have told you a few stories, interesting stories also, and you have to communicate. Now you have to put it what we call a story. So how to communicate a story? Why you write a story also? You are basically communicating it to some people. That's why you are writing that story. You are not writing a story because you are a writer. Even if the best of poet and literary writers also, they also write to for somebody. It's not an internal entertainment things that happen. So come back to the very basics. How to communicate a story. First of all, what is a story you have to know. Remember, I am using this word story just a story can be a piece of research, a story can be a one piece of data, a story can be a anything, just that piece. I'm just naming it story because I used to call it a story. I'm very much used to it as a journalist. Everything we call a story actually. We are giving an opinion piece also and we call it a story. So that's how it's. So first is what is a story? That questions must be raised before you exactly start communicating anything. Isn't it in our day-to-day life also when you sit down for a, conversations, we do start the conversation from somewhere. What is that? So what is a story? Going by or any research you do or anything. It's not always, going by the conventional definitions and all these things. A story or a news is something has to be new. Then the questions comes, is it so that every time I do something, I research, I want to write something that has to be new so that it will qualify as a story, so that people will be actually interested to hear about that? Not exactly. New is also sometimes newness. Remember. And when we'll go, we'll get to know in all your examples or the writings you people will be doing, we'll come to that. But new doesn't mean that something has to be invented or discovered or new. There is always an aspect to new is the newness. And then the next question comes, if it is so, then can anything be told as a story anytime? It means repeating the same story, repetitive way of doing things, like our TV debates, like the songs playing in the loop, or like the railway declarations or the airport declarations telling you. Not exactly. So let me try to actually decipher few of these things that usually we fight inside our brain when you do this. Context of the text. Everything can be new. Everything can be told as a new story, as a new message. It has to be relevant. It has to be put in a context, and it has to be put in a wider frame, what we call framing a story. So the text, the context, the relevance, and the frame can be new. That's where basically anything that you do, which might be age old age. Say, for example, you must have, I think, listened to this also. Why I need to talk about a 5,000 years old traditional water harvesting structures now? Actually, it doesn't qualify as a technology anymore. Then why I'm obsessed with this? Recently, the whole, this one UN convention on desertifications, there was a conference of parties meeting. Everybody was talking, the world was talking about, get back to our traditional knowledge of water harvestings. Why? Isn't it a very old story? So it means that you can always retell a story. The same Bethal and what is that Bethal and the one, Raja or whatever that story, that any fairy tales that we say, those can be retold. We just had this Santa Claus. He's from the Arctic region, I think, so he can be retold. What happens? I think Santa's story can be retold in a very powerful new context. That's because the Arctic is melting now. First time ever we will see the soil in Arctic. It's melting due to global warming. What would happen to Santa? Its costumes, the ice, the food. So that whole story can be retold in a new context. It's never old actually. Similarly, it has to be relevant. Whatever you want to communicate now, it could sound very cliched. Even climate change is sounding cliched now. It's we are talking about so much. It's definitely is the defining crisis we are going through. But that story can also be again told. But it should be relevant. And come to the next defining is the point is that it has to be strategic. So what is strategic? I think we can understand a story can be retold in a new context, even an old story, because it has to be just relevant. As I told you, Santa Claus story can be relevant because We are talking about that Arctic, where Santa apparently comes from. There's all these fairy tales about, all can be snowmen and all these things could be told that way. But what is the strategic word that we see? What we see that in communications, particularly because we communicate with the objective of bringing in a change or convincing people about some things, or you can say that broadly, we communicate to influence. That's basically you have to be strategic. You may pick up a story about a traditional water harvesting structures. You may pick up a story about the plastic pollutions. You may pick up a research points on, waste management or recycling of wastewater. It is relevant, definitely. There is no doubt about it. But you need to be strategic. Strategic means basically your communications or the research or the story that you want to write must have a plan behind it. I must have a plan behind it. I want to actually strike you this way, telling you that, why you should abandon, for example, plastic completely out of your life. And I must actually be strategic to use Santa Claus or anybody from that regions to tell that Santa is just coming in a two-piece suit now. Means two-piece, just one undie and not a cap because it's warming. So I need to be that strategic in my communications. That's all about also storytelling. I think all the great stories you remember, it must have this strategic part to the communications. Now the third point, context to the text. Text is actually useless. It's just like a, knowledge without imagination. The context actually defines whether your text will be powerful or not, whether it will be read or not, whether it will be understood or not. So what is the context? Context always changes. That's why in the beginning we said that any story can be retold. There is nothing said that a new story has to be invented every minute. If you know the context will change. So in that new context, an old story can also be told. So that's why basically what we are doing is that for every story, we are bringing out context. For every research, we are bringing out a new context to it. And we are retelling the story. As I told you, the 5,000 years old water harvesting structures. Why I'm talking about that now? The communities that evolved that technology of water harvesting 5,000 years ago, learning from its own environment, own, experiences of getting water in that particular region, they had their own context. Why I am now retelling a story after 5,000 years where I get my water from a tap, isn't it? Swachh Bharat and all this Har Ghar Nal and everything. So why I should be worried about a communities who 5,000 years old technology? There must be a context to it. That's why we are talking about it. That's why people are doing research, people are bringing out storage and telling this storage and making it relevant again in a new context. So that's actually the one part of the things. Now come to the all the technical part of it. It's good to tell a story. It's good. I am very sure about my context. I am very sure about one thing is that whatever I am going to, communicate or whatever my research has found, it's very much relevant. And my text is in the very relevant in the right context. So I'm going to have an impact. Just like any writer, like Arundhati Roy or Marquez or anybody, my story will be read now because I got everything right now. But Now the questions comes ki how I will frame it. Framing is all about that, you must have seen in your movies and everything, there is something called screenplay. I might have the best story, but if somebody who is actually writing the screenplay actually tells you the story, how it will pan on the screen, if I'm watching the movie. Similarly, if somebody is reading you, basically going through that paragraphs, it might just look like few paragraphs, and but remember there is a story that is running. There are characters. Some people are speaking. You have done fantastic research, but what would happen to the data or the research outcomes if you have not put it in a way that your reader or whom you want to target will actually read it, will have an impact, understand, and take it forward, so that you will communicate well to have that change. So, how to frame the story? The first question usually comes is why did I do this? First of all, the first questions is basically why I have to do this research or write this story or tell somebody's story to begin with. The why. That's the first one you have to answer. For example, I gave you, suppose, and sometime back we did a big story in Down to Earth magazine for which I work, is on this how why many countries in the northern hemisphere, particularly around the North Poles, are raising new battalions, defense battalions. That was a story. That could have been a story for anybody to tell us, not for Down to Earth. Down to Earth, as you know, we report on environment and development. So we have certain things. So when we looked at this, we wanted to tell the story. So the first question comes to why I have to tell stories about countries around Arctic are suddenly increasing their forces. Are they going to for a war? So why do I do a story on this? So we looked for that why. So you must answer why to begin with. Why you want to do some research? Why you want to write a story? Why you want to do anything? Why? And our why was that because Arctic is melting. And in Arctic you have so much of gas, minerals that it will actually redefine the geopolitics in the world. So because it's melting, and it's getting exposed now, countries around that have started actually reclaiming areas so that they will have access to rare materials, they will have gas, they will have petroleums, everything. That's why. That was why we wanted to do a story on Arctic. The second questions, what was the context to it? Again, remember this word context. Without context, you don't communicate. Without context, you don't exist. So, second questions, when you frame a story or any research or anything, the second question comes, okay, in which context I will tell the story or I will do the research. As I gave you the example, the story we did is that the world is undergoing a complete change in the geopolitics in near future, but the context is actually global warming or climate change. So it became a climate change story for us. In that context, we told the story. So you have to also write down what is the context. Now the third questions. Why should I communicate it now? You remember in the beginning we said that a new story, the story has to be new or newness. So why should I communicate it now? I must have something interesting that it's happening, that I need to tell it now, that I need to communicate now. Rajasthan's in the desert, you have this traditional water harvesting technologies, which evolved thousands of years ago, nearly abundant. Now, why I should communicate it? Going there, it's no more there. You have to raise these questions. You will find this answer anyway. I'll tell you means why you have to also communicate about Rajasthan. But why should I communicate it now? You have to answer before you frame the story. Then the fourth question is, who is my audience? I just don't do it randomly. Whoever you are, whatever you are researching for, whatever you are communicating for, there is always an audience, and you know that strategically you have to look for whom do I actually write this piece or do this research, or whom I should target my communications. I am a researcher, policy researcher, public policy researchers. I know, okay, I have to, my audience will be this department, this policymakers. So I know this. This is my audience. So these are the four questions that first, when you frame before taking up a story or a research or anything that you want to do now. So the first, why I do this, what is the context to it, why should I communicate it now? That's a newness, or giving it to relevance and these things. And who is my audience? That's most important because most of us communicate to things. Now, basically, once you know this, draw this frame. This is almost like creating your when you are building a house, the first layout. Put up that notebook and start laying out your story. And what is this? In down to earth, we call it a treatment note. We go by this a very simple tool. Treatment note is a medical term. Actually, treatment note is something that you get as prescription from doctor. Isn't it? The doctor actually writes there your name, the disease name, diagnosis, will the basics. Then we'll say that कि this batika, that गोली शाम को सुबह 3 बार 4 बार 2 दिन के बाद फॉलो अप चौथे दिन के बाद ये टेस्ट ऑफ टेस्ट. It's basically treatment notice ki how a doctor is going to treat you or preparing a parcha for your health conditions towards recovery. So treatment note is actually mega. And for the story and communications, what you do that it's precisely the same. So basically in treatment note, I am writing down ki what I will research for, what will be objective, what will be the, why I am writing it, and all the details that. And remember, communications is very scientific. It's not that, for no reason that some people communicate really well, you get impressed. Look at those pravachan people, all the babas and mamas that give pravachans. You will listen to them, or orators. Communications is actually a deep science of interactions. It goes inside your neurons. And if you understand the basic structure of the science, then you will get to know it. So that's all about the treatment note. So what is a treatment note? So basically this treatment note, what we call for any research or writing you do, it basically very general way, it explains, it captures the science, how you communicate. So what is this treatment note? Lay out your communication story into below. First, what is a drama? It has three parts in a treatment note. It's a piece of paper you are writing down and it has three parts: drama, story, and message. So what is the drama? Drama means basically the most interesting part of a communications. Santa Claus will not have the extreme cold climate dressing anymore because Arctic is warming. It could be one way of retelling a story. Or the drama could be, anything that you say that which will actually strike you, which actually gives you that, what do you call? jing or something that actually gives the your target audience something to actually think about and to enter into your communication piece. It's one way. If you go to a shopping mall, this all this they put in the windows. What is that called? Mannequins and all these things. They put all their good things in the display. You do your window shopping first actually, then you enter to the showroom looking at them. Same with the bookstore you go also. So you have to, one drama you have to take out. The second is the story. That's the most important part of it. What is that story that I'm talking about? I'm going to tell or to do research. And third is the message. The message is important because all your story and the drama are driving towards that one message where you will actually communicate and have your things. So put down these three things before you do this. Now come to the structuring part. Once you are ready with your treatment note, you know the drama, you know the story, and you have the message. That's one way your house layout is done. Now actually start building the house. Real job of putting concrete and bricks and mortars and everything into it. So that's called the structure. It's a construction time, construction stage. Structuring actually makes the difference because that's where the science of communications plays a role. If you are not structured, you are hayward and you don't know how I'll put my argument one after another leading to the conclusions. Then your readers will not also get to know about that. So you won't communicate. You won't have that impact that you are aspiring for. Or you won't be able to even tell a story. So structure is actually God one way. So based on the treatment note, write down the sections, paragraph, relevant data, elements needed. So it's basically saying, okay, structure is I have this treatment note, drama, story, and message. Now in the structure, you write it down. First paragraph, I'll have this, which will capture my drama. So it could be like this with the 100 heads of state from across the world gave a call to revive the traditional wisdom of people, to harvest the water as it was done in ancient time. And in 21st century, this the ancient technology is basically going to rescue the world where 60% of the populations will become water scarce in the next 10 years. So basically you structure now based on the treatment out. Okay, I will write this paragraph first. After that, I'll write that paragraph. After that, I'll write that one. I'll write that one, that one, that one, that one. And according to everything, structuring one after another, you also write down, okay, I might be needing this data. I might be needing this info. So you write it down. So that's how basically you frame and prepare the structure. And also once you are finalizing, you will also get to know, okay, how it's moving. If it's not clear, if it's not answering to each of your questions, that then you are also not getting or not communicating well. So making the structure actually helps you also to what to include in your research or your story writing, so that you actually direct your research. You go out, you search your informations, you do your library work, you look for characters. If you are into that kind of reporting like us, whatever you do, you have to go and speak to people. We do our research, then we look for the human figures. That's our story, our way of doing story. So this is very important. Now, how to do structuring? Now look at it. This is very, very general one that we do, and this is how it's done. The intro, the drama part of the treatment. Intro is basically short for introduction. For anything that you read, you must have a first. It's called the introductions, intro. The drama part of the treatment note comes here. Write it down as I explained you. The story, that's the most important part. Story part of treatment note thrust down to each aspect of your story into sections and subsections. What I'll write in the section, how many sections I'll have, each section actually giving you a part of the story. Then each section might have subsection to do that. And remember, the story, the structure of a story has not changed. It will have a beginning, it will have a middle, it will have an end. Whatever, whichever story you do, whether you are doing a research, you are like writing a thesis, you are writing a news story, you are doing a film also, you are doing a multimedia product also. It will have a beginning, it will have a middle, it will have an end. So the story itself has that three components, and what you thrash it down, what I'll do actually. So each aspect of your story into sections and subsections. For example, I'll do, okay, Arctic warming and melting. I will first write the drama and all these things, and after that story, I'll say ki, how much. So I'll go back. I'll basically want to qualify how much ice Arctic is melting. I want research 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 like this. Then I'll say that in how many years it might go or vanish. Then I'll look for it. Then I will say that ki, okay, in the 10 years, what could be the scenarios? That's future. I'll go back and research and all these things. So that's why basically, then the question will come that, okay, this is first time, I want to, nobody has seen a piece of Arctic, actually the soil. Countries don't know how to share that piece of land. Then I enter into this thing. So this basically thrust down sections, subsections, so that it helps you in telling the story, in directing your research, and to communicate well also. And the way ahead at the end, that's broadly the message part of treatment note. So basically, what message you want to give based on all these things. So this is how you do it. Now, I'll actually, you will get to do your research now, but I'll just do it quickly. I think so. This is not the one that I wanted to do it, but one thing I can ask you, recently we found that an interesting story. As you know, Rajasthan is India's desert state, means it has the third desert. It's not known for its bounty rainfall. In fact, till recently, the state's disaster management guidelines didn't have the word called flood. It only allowed droughts or famines, storms, dust storms. As recent as just 7, 8 years ago, last time got the disaster called flood into its disaster management program. Why is that happening? Why is raining so heavily in Rajasthan? Actually, the desert areas are reporting extreme rainfalls. It's exceeding by 60 to 70% a year average. In fact, it rained so much this monsoon that Rajasthan's groundwater has increased by up to 6 meter. So the pitch could be, I saw a story saying that why suddenly people are using the same water harvesting structures which they actually use to harvest water in a very scarce conditions like a desert conditions are now reviving them for flood control. You can think over. That's the story that I am framing now. I'm going through the same thing. I'm doing research. I want to tell the story. I'm writing my treatment note and I'm thrashing it out. Why these crazy people are using and how they are using it for flood controls. It was supposed to harvest the scarce rainfall, just 100 rainfall in a year. That's why they created the water harvesting structures. How will it be used? I think to control flood now, and people are doing that. That's quite fascinating. So this could be an exercise. So I am currently doing it. So I am looking at who are these people doing it. First, let's look at it. My relevant, it's very much relevant for me. I have already looked at it. That's why the why of the story is already done. I want to do this because Rajasthan is no more going to be a desert. It's raining there and it's flooding. So that's why I'm telling the story now. Second, my context is climate change. I think that's where the climate change impact is showing up. Third, why now? Because I have the climate change impact is creating floods. That's why I want to tell a story that okay, technology for drought area is being used to actually control flood. Then I want to now I'll go and look at it how they are doing it and all these things. So that's how basically framing takes place. So this is a very basic of how to frame a story and how to get organized about it so that thought process goes into it so that you direct your research, you communicate it well, and you get your impact also. So this is all about. I'll be ready to take questions or clarifications. So this was all about communications. So I'm stopping here so I can take up questions or any clarifications.
Thanks a lot, Richard. You've really put a clear structure for everyone here in place. And I hope that you were constantly thinking about your topic that you're going to take up for your assignment. And now you can ask any questions that you have. They can be about any specific idea that you have about your topic. They can be about the structure. They can be about anything that has been covered today. You can put them in the chat box if you want, or you can unmute yourself and ask.
Sir, what about the antibiotics in food topic, like how it can be related with the local problems?
Okay. Am I supposed? Can I respond to this?
Yes, please, Richard.
To your question, that yes, it's not only relevant, there is an immediacy about it also. Antimicrobial resistance or antibiotic resistance, what we call, is turning out to be the biggest health crisis. And remember, this is a very day-to-day. It's every individual. It's a local story. It's a global story. It's actually a challenge to the complete medical regime now because we
Is it like related to gut bacteria, all those things?
no, exactly. Gut bacteria is a different things, but what's happening? Antibiotic resistance is basically your microbes. Your microbes get resistant to the drugs that you use to fight them. So it means the antibiotic or the medicine that you are using to fight the microbes, microbial attacks, they have become resistant to it. So you are not being treated now. So it means more deaths, more illness. Like the World Bank and WHO said that 50 million deaths expected due to antimicrobial resistance. And why is that resistance happening? The resistance is happening because overuse. First, आप भी जानते होंगे कि कुछ भी हो जाता है हमारा तो सर्दी जुकाम भी हो जाता है तो हम एंटीबायोटिक खुद ही खा लेते हैं आजकल तो प्रेस्क्रिप्शन का भी जरूरी नहीं पड़ता है खुद ही खा लेते हैं दिस ओवर यूज फर्स्ट सेकेंड इज एंटीबायोटिक इज ऑल्सो एवरीवेयर देयर it's not just that for human consumption our consumption it's there everywhere in your livestock in your environment in your aquaculture everywhere it's being used so full doses of. Then the third question is that the way that new antibiotics should come or emerge for treatment, that's not happening. So it is a health crisis and it's a problem. And it's a very much a relevant topic where many people dying of infections because the microbes have become resistant to. And particularly, you must have seen it, I think it's always comes also दवा काम नहीं कर रहा है एंटीबायोटिक काम नहीं कर रहा है and finally you die of many diseases that could have been cured.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Anything else that you would like to discuss with Richard?
One more thing, one more topic was there around organic waste management. So, can we relate to the waste that is being generated from the vegetable vendors in local market which are being rotten or are dumbed down. So can we relate that with organic waste management? How it can be recycled to make fertilizers or compost out of it?
Yeah, of course, of course. I think you have great examples there already how these are things being used. Kerala could be one example where at scale they are using it and this model, and they are very successful also. And similarly, there are other models also
Can you
available.
share the thing that you said about Kerala, like they are successful in terms of like making those compost from food waste or like vegetable waste?
Yes, in fact, they have made it in Kerala. It's almost like a household level campaign, and they have created, incentives for people to create their own compost, use it, and taking of their vegetables. And it's quite a big. In fact, remember, it's a statewide, and it's very successful. Similarly, there are many other, even in Karnataka, we have seen it, and it's catching up in many places. Compost is turning out to be a big business. Yeah, I remember we reported about Karnataka in places they're earning by millions, and this is using your own waste and these things, and it's taking off. So there are examples, successful examples, and sustainable
Thank
also.
you, sir.
Richard, somebody has a question in the chat box on the structuring method that you were talking about, essentially whether the treatment note is applicable to broader subjects like climate change or to localized sort of subjects and activities. Would you like to answer that?
Yeah,
Somebody called Kola Hima Bindu.
yeah.
Yes,
Bindu, if I can answer you this, that's it's very much applicable because this is the way you communicate. So it's irrespective of even you can do for anything that you want to communicate, you want to research or you want to write or do anything. This treatment note is basically it structures you. So it's applicable irrespective of whichever topic or anything you want to do take off. It just gives you that things. Like for example, if you want to climate change, I think any story can be told in climate change. Remember, climate change is no more the story per se. Rather, climate change has become the context in which every story is told. As I told you, I'm talking about water harvesting, traditional water harvesting in terms of a new climate. That's flood in Rajasthan desert. I'm talking about geopolitics in context of climate because Arctic is warming. So it's basically one way of mm, directing your or framing your story or research. So it's applicable everywhere.
precisely. You were talking with Lipun right now, and he was talking about the organic waste thing. That is also can be connected to climate change as well. Look at the methane emissions from landfills,
Yeah,
and you can weave a story around that.
yeah.
So for those of you who do not know Shoparno, he is the director of the environment education team. So thank you for your input, Shoparno. We will take maybe a couple more questions if there are any, and then we will close for the day. So if anybody else wants to discuss any ideas that they have in their mind, you can do that. Any questions about the structuring, like Bindu asked, or about a specific topic that you have chosen?
I suppose they will have more questions, Sakshi, once they start, working on the subjects. But I saw somebody had raised a hand when Tushita was talking about whether people, or you were talking about whether people had identified what specific topics they would like to look at. Is anybody there who has identified any topic that they would like to work on? Maybe we could sort of close with that, perhaps.
Yeah, I think Chirag, it was you who had said that you had identified your topic. Could you let us know?
Okay. Chirag
that
Anand
I
has.
selected my topic, but I selected my topic. It's related to the air pollution that Delhi have faced uh, every year Delhi have faced the air
Mhm.
pollution. So as a local, Delhi have the major problem of air pollution. So I choose the topic air pollution.
Right. Okay. So you're based in Delhi, Chirag?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
born and brought up in Delhi.
Right, right. And is there anything specific on air pollution? But like what Richard was saying, with respect to climate change, air pollution is also an extremely sort of wide-ranging and broad subject area. Is there anything specific that you have in mind related to that, or are you looking at the whole scenario per se?
So basically, my main point was to not talk. We talk about the problem, but major point was to talk about the solution, how
Right.
we tackle this pollution.
Okay.
If we talking about only problem, then we are not go to in the right direction. So the
Hmm.
main point is to talk about the solution, how green energy can solve this problem, how the shift from the diesel and petrol vehicles to the electric vehicle,
Hmm.
and how government policy helps. So my main point was to tackle the problems with the solution.
Solution in mind. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
उसमें कुछ टिप्स दे सकते हैं रिचर्ड आप इनको?
Tips or nahi, but it will be good. I think if you are looking at solutions, remember Delhi's pollution particularly has a history of nearly 30 years of bringing in solutions. And if you look at it, whatever you are getting now, the worst, I think, air pollution happens after 30 years of bringing in all these solutions. So rather one way, good you are looking at solutions. Look at the solutions that offer to Delhi and why they have not worked. That could actually point out to the whether the solutions were good or bad or were not adequate, or it might indicate what you need to do more, because Delhi got almost like the whole national focus on bringing it down its pollutions, from switching over to lead free petrol to sulfur less diesel to ban on diesel vehicles to CNG to everything was closed down. You have a graded response to these things, but why that in Delhi we get so happy when you get a poor air quality, saying that that is the cleanest we can enjoy in life in Delhi. So rather look at those, so many solutions were offered here and being implemented, and why it's not helping out. I think you have to answer that questions. For me, that will be a great way of looking at it.
सर बेसिकली व्हेन लॉकडाउन था 2020 में सब एक लाइन बहुत सुनी जाती थी दैट दिल्ली हैव द क्लियर एयर आफ्टर अ लॉन्ग टाइम. सो
Mhm.
हम दोबारा वो इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं कर सकते, तो हमें उसी मतलब उससे रिलेटेड कि उधर हम ऐसा क्या इम्प्लीमेंट करें कि हमें क्लीन एयर मिले. सो
No, that is the precise point I'm telling you. The blue sky that happened during the lockdown, you can't have a lockdown. So the message was
हाँ
that
दैट्स
only,
लाइक
Delhi has two messages. One is that lockdown, and across the world, everybody got a bit of breather. But now it's raining, so it might be the only few hours that you are getting a breathable air. So it means that it should rain continuously and you get clean air. Now the second question is that, remember, Delhi, as I told you, it's you name it and you have it. The second question is that how the other cities actually got their air right. So it will be good. You look at it. But the solution that you are saying that those are already there for 30 years. No city in the world had this kind of transitions, and still it looks dirty. But there are many cities which are actually have become very clean, doing the same thing. So I think for me, if you ask me, I think that's how I might just enter the story and to say that why, despite all this thing, Delhi is dirty. Are we doing all these steps were adequate or not adequate? First, if adequate, then why it's not showing up? Or do we need to actually do more? or something else that we don't know, that will also indicate. Yes, lockdown is not the way, but keep it in mind, in grab 4 and all this thing happened when they actually pulled down the vehicles and all these things. The roads were leaner.
Yes, sir.
The pollution was not that much low.
Yes, sir. So we should work on the case study like other countries or other states who work on the pollution. So we can work on that case studies and work on solution and on the more on the implementations of that solutions that we
Yeah.
are lacking on that, I guess.
Hmm.
Okay, I think we can close here for the day. We have taken a few examples and I think बाकी आप सबको थोड़ा सा idea at least मिला होगा कि आप कैसे अलग-अलग directions explore कर सकते हैं. So thank you so much, Richard. This was really helpful for everyone, I'm sure, and now they will be able to think about the assignment in a very structured way, in a very फॉर्मेटेड वे जिसमें वो सोच पाएंगे कि कैसे हर प्रॉब्लम को एक्सप्लोर करना है. सो थैंक्स अ लॉट एंड
Sakshi, there's one more question from Vaishnavi in the chat box. Vaishnavi, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
yeah, Vaishnavi, that sounds like a very long question. Can you please ask directly, unmute करके? Vaishnavi, are you here?
Yes, am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible. Please go ahead.
I am from Western Ghats, so I am thinking to take topic related to climate change and water security and its impact on water security. So I just want to know about this topic, like how hydrological cycle in Western Ghat impact affected by the climate change. So it can be helpful, or how can I structure this in while writing?
She has
Okay.
actually, Richard, she has put across some very interesting, ideas in the form of questions.
Yeah.
So you can take a look at them and respond to her right now if we have the time. Otherwise, we can get back to her and help her structure those ideas. I mean, in fact,
Okay.
I was telling her that each of them can make individual, stories. In fact.
Exactly. And I think just to broadly to say that,
Hmm.
why Western Ghats now? I'll put that way. And you saw many disaster include the Wayanad. That's the first sign that, irrespective of level of destructions is human induced or human caused. But the extreme rainfall. So I'll go ahead saying that like as far as I know, based on these things, Western Ghat is a climate hotspot now. So I'll start with that way. Wayanad was the first message. Before that was also many messages were things. If you come to, water security, I think that will be very specific and will be good if you explore that. Because biodiversity, yes, important, but remember, Western Ghats is a major catchment area for many rivers and streams. It's not just that the people in Western Ghats are dependent on Western Ghats. Its water is actually some, about 70 million people actually depend on the water that originate from Western Ghats. And one of the big climate change impact on Western Ghats is basically its declining rainfall. It's becoming erratic. When it rains, it pours, but it's coming down. So that is the way you can actually link it to from the Western Ghat to the water security. It's linked with climate change and how it's going to impact the larger water security of people. So that way it can be actually done.
Uh, Thank you, sir, for your brief explaining the topic. Now it can be helpful for me, and thank you.
Okay, so I guess that was the last question for the day, and we can close here. Just a reminder for anyone who has not yet submitted the social media activity, please do that by tomorrow morning, and you can just email it to me. So I will float a Google form in the WhatsApp group with your where I like you to submit your topics that you have chosen. So please ensure that you have selected and finalized your topics by tomorrow, and then you can share them with us. We'll close here for today, and we will share the next steps with you in the WhatsApp groups meanwhile. So thank you, Richard. Thank you, Shuparno. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Good evening. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Thank you.